do it.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's RD2RD Live Show. I am, of course, your host, Megan Boitano, and I'm excited today, joined by Orly Wachter. She is, I think we kind of go way back in online business terms, but Orly is a business coach for dietitians, but what I've really enjoyed is watching, Orly go from really having a successful practice and really doing all of the things right. And what I really love about Orly is her ability to write great copy. So I have kind of a crush on her copywriting skills, on writing compelling email content, social media content. So if you don't already follow her, I would recommend that you do, because she does an excellent job really connecting with her audience, offering great insight, and teaching along those same lines, because we know that the words we use are incredibly important. All right, Orly. So today we're going to talk about free downloads and highly, popular, effective from a list building perspective. But one of the things personally I got wrong early on was the concept of I have a free download and I got maybe 100 new signups, that really measuring the success of my free download on how many signups I got from my list, when in reality, a signup doesn't necessarily generate a new client. It doesn't necessarily sell a product. It's kind of a vanity metric of sorts. You obviously have to get people onto your list, but it doesn't end there. And it really took me a bit of time to figure out, okay, so if that's not it, what is it, that whole customer journey? So today I'm hoping we'll, in simple terms, talk about what do you do after you get that subscriber? Because of course, creating the freebie, we'll talk about maybe getting, that stuff is great, but I want to take it one step further in this interview. So thank you for being here today. And let's kick things off and have you, tell us a little bit about your background. I alluded to a few things.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was really excited when you actually invited me for this particular topic, because the last time we spoke on the show, which I can't believe was in 2018, time really flies, but we talked about lead magnets back then, and this is sort of the follow-up to that, which is the next step after you have the lead magnet, what comes next. So it's kind of a cool progression there. But yeah, a little bit about me. I've been a dietitian for 13 years, and I worked in clinical oncology for a good chunk of that for about 8 to 9 years. And I started my first online business, the skincare dietitian, while I was still working full-time in oncology. And after having my son, we get a pretty long mat leave here in Canada. I'm in Canada, so we get a year, which is really nice. And after that year, I decided not to go back and just really focus on my online business. So that was the skincare dietitian at the time. And from there, I progressed into business coaching for other dietitians.
So that's what you're up to now. But I have a little tidbit about you. You are story brand certified, right? In like writing? Is that you? No, that's not you. You have.
So I am certified as a direct response copywriter,
Okay,
but
that's what it is.
Not through StoryBrand. But StoryBrand is really cool too.
I remembered you got some certification. I got the wrong certification. So I kind of want to ask you a little bit about why you felt that was important and what it kind of did for you, because I think that's a fun little tidbit.
Yeah, I mean, so copywriting is just such a valuable skill to have as an online business owner. I think so many of my clients and myself, like, I didn't realize when I started my first business how much time actually goes into content creation. And writing is something that I've always loved. I mean, even as a kid, like, I used to write stories and I've journaled for most of my life. So writing has always been something that kind of felt natural to me, but taking that additional certification really helped me write in a more compelling way for online business, because the way we're taught to write in the academic world is obviously very different than the kind of writing you want for getting people to really take action and download your stuff and book calls and work with you. So it definitely helped me kind of fine tune those skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm always wishing, I think, that alone is just so essential, the copywriting. And I think it's like an aha moment that happens later because you're so focused, especially if you're starting a private practice with an online business. There's so many things that need your attention early on. So I want to frame this conversation around, obviously, the topic of a lead magnet or an opt-in. I want to talk about some examples, of one you've created, or maybe some that the clients that you've worked with as a coach have created, so we really understand what it is, and then we'll talk maybe some more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So for people who don't know what a lead magnet is or what we're talking about, I mean, some people call them opt-ins or freebies or lead magnets. And essentially, it's just an incentive to get somebody to hand over their email address. And it can come in many different forms. It could be like a meal plan. It could be a checklist. It could be a video series. There's so many different types of lead magnets. But the whole point is just to deliver value, to build a relationship with your potential customer and get them to give over their email address so that they're on your email list. So, I mean, like I said, they can really vary. One that I used in my skincare dietitian business was 10 ways. It was a guide, 10 ways to get clear skin right now. And that one did really well. One that I have right now in my business is 7 powerful questions to help you narrow your niche or niche, whatever you want to call it. But that's just such a big pain point for new entrepreneurs. It's like deciding on who they want to work with, what problem they want to solve. So that lead magnet is also really effective because it's targeted at a specific pain point. One that a client created was about five simple solutions to make family meal times fun again, even if you've got a picky eater. So that was kind of solved a pain point for her audience, which is parents who struggle with picky eating and really don't enjoy those mealtime battles. So there's so many different options, though. Like I said, meal plans, video series, quizzes.
Yes, and part of why I wanted to kind of talk about lead magnets today, but not just, how to pick a good one, because I think we get stuck there, but so that you have the whole process in mind. So if you're, listening in and you're like, well, I don't have a high performing, lead magnet yet, or I don't that opt in, or I don't actually know the pain point, what I want you to do is kind of mentally set that aside, because I want you to take some time while I'm talking to Orly, because we're going to map out the rest of that. So you can come back to what it is you're going to use as that tantalizing lead. But if you don't have those steps after the fact, like how am I going to then walk this person who is now interested along the line, you can come back to that, but you need the rest of these pieces. So kind of, yes, you need it. You need to know what, pain points, but try to set that aside, because we're going to talk about some of the next steps, right, Orly?
Yes, exactly.
So let's assume now that, someone has signed up for your email list. What's the best way to follow up with them? But, maybe some of us perhaps left them hanging. So maybe we can talk about what's ideal. Like what should you do? And then what do you do when, you have a few hundred people or 1,000 and you've ignored them for a while? That never happens, right? Just never.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely want to have a welcome email at the very least. I mean, it's nice to have a sequence that follows that, but at the very least, you want to have a welcome email that not only delivers the actual thing that they've wanted to download, the lead magnet itself, but kind of gives them a little taste, a little introduction of what they've signed up for, like what can they expect, how often are you going to email them, and maybe, throw in some personality there, right? So that they just get a sense of who you are and who they've chosen to download from. So the welcome email is really important. They have like the highest open rates. I mean, compared to, like my welcome emails have 79% open rates versus like just regular emails, which are more in the 30 to 40% range. So a welcome email is the most opened email because people are excited. They've decided to download this thing. They want it right away. So you want it to get sent out immediately because that's when their excitement is most high. And so you're delivering the goods, but also giving them like a nice introduction because they've welcomed you into their inbox. So make it worthwhile.
Excellent. Yes. So that welcome email, I think you made some excellent points there about, it being a highly opened message and also showing some personality. I follow Paul Jarvis. He does the Chimp Essentials course, but he's a brilliant writer. I'm a big fan of his book as well. But his welcome email was hilarious. Like it was like, I was, when I saw that you subscribed, I was so excited. I ran out and I got your name tattooed on my arm. It was just hilarious, right? Like his personality. And you see that in the way that he writes. Not that I'm saying that would be appropriate for your audience, but that it's okay to have some, personality and show who you are in the welcome email.
Yeah.
Well,
Think of how many emails you've subscribed to, like how many lists you've subscribed to, and it's so easy to get lost in that. So if you want to stand out and you want your potential customer to keep clicking on your emails, then you want it to be fun for them and to deliver value to them.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So on the converse, so let's say we created this amazing, guide. Let's say it's a, like you said, the tips, right? Like a small guide. And you have people signing up for your list, and you maybe didn't set up that welcome email. We're going to talk about a nurture sequence, and you've been leaving them kind of hanging. You have this, group of people that are on your list, no matter whether it's 30 or 330 or 3030. What should you do to kind of re-engage them? Is that the worst thing ever?
I mean, no, like it happens. And especially when you're getting started, there's other ways to build relationships with people. So don't feel like you have to go out and write this like 9-step email sequence right now, because that's only just going to hold you back from other tasks in your business. But if you've left your list hanging, it's never too late to just pop back in, reintroduce yourself, pretty similar to what you would do in a welcome email, which is like, who are you? Because at this point, if they subscribed for your thing like 3 months ago and they haven't heard from you, well, they're probably not going to remember. So you want to reintroduce yourself, maybe remind them of why they subscribed, and expect that you will get some unfollows because people are like, who is this person? And they decide to unfollow. So that's fine. That's perfectly normal, but just dive back in there. I don't think you need a lengthy explanation or an apology. That's only going to draw more attention to the fact that you've been missing. So just pick up, carry on.
Mm-hmm. So we have kind of this idea of our, we have our email list, right? That we have an existing group of people that we're keeping in contact with, right, on a regular basis. And then let's say we have our free download, right? So that's people are coming into our list, and then we'll start talking about kind of that nurture sequence. So we welcome them to our list, and then we want each new subscriber to if we want to call it that, that nurture sequence, but it's that series of emails that helps to compel them, right, to take a specific action. Maybe it's book a discovery call, maybe could be buy our course if maybe our freebie is related to a specific pain point in a online program that we're offering, or an ebook, or a recipe guide. It doesn't really matter, any paid product that we have, that we're using our lead to bring them in, and then we need to have a a series of emails. So we kind of have this whole topic of this nurture sequence, but also or is it a launch sales campaign? So maybe you can kind of talk through that, and are they the same thing? What does it mean?
So basically, before you get started with writing any sort of email sequence, you want to have some idea of where you want people to go. So is it booking a call with you? Is it, like you said, purchasing a course? And then you kind of work backwards from there. But the whole point of these sequences is to build relationships. That's the whole foundation of business. And I think sometimes we look at, like, we think, oh, I need this email funnel, I need this fancy sequence, and we get so lost in some of the details there and the tech piece, and we forget that it's really all about just building a relationship with a potential client. So you're just delivering value, you're giving people the information that they need to know to take the next step. So who are you? What problem are you solving for them? How do you do that? What's your unique approach? What are, like, some common objections they might have from buying your thing? And then all of those things are things you could address in your email sequence at various phases, right? So you're starting off with the welcome, then you're delivering more value. I'm always like all about the value. Just keep giving value, and then maybe a case study about somebody who's worked with you and the results they saw to show some proof there, and then lead them to booking that call with you or to buying the thing. But I'd say, like, you don't want to dive right in like the second email to buy my thing or to work with me, because it's like a relationship. You wouldn't, on the second date, you wouldn't be like, marry me or whatever, right? It takes time to build the trust there. And so that's the point of your email sequence, is to be in their life regularly, right? You're popping into their inbox on a regular basis, telling your story, telling them about your program, and then asking them to take the next step when it feels right.
Got it. So or what resources do you recommend that are really helpful around the nurture sequence? Where can you go to really, I guess, if we want to call it your email funnel, your new subscriber sequence? What do you recommend?
Like where to learn about it?
Yeah.
Honestly, there's lots of copywriters who have websites where they talk about things like what to include in a welcome email or what a sequence should look like. I think it's going to vary, right, depending on where you're leading people and your particular audience. I know Lori Kennedy has a good a blog. I think it's a 3-part blog post on email marketing, and she includes kind of a layout of what you could include in some of your emails.
Okay.
Yeah, the way I typically like to, like, if you're going to do, say, a 5-part email sequence, then like welcome emails the first one, second one is that more value, right? And some, like, these are just some tips that come to mind, but you want, in each of those emails, you definitely want to have a call to action, and it could be something as simple as like, join my Facebook group, or check out this podcast I'm really enjoying, or like later on, book a call with me. But you always want to have a call to action, even if it's small, like hit reply and let me know, something you did this weekend or whatever. But because that way you're training people to take action, and the more they take those small actions, little micro actions, the more likely they are to take the bigger action later, which is booking a call or purchasing from you. So definitely each email should include a call to action. The other thing, it's like a lot of people don't use PSs, but I really love to have a PS because there's so much you can do with it. Some people are, they just scroll, right? They don't really read the email. So if you put the gist of your email into the PS, that kind of takes care of people who aren't fully reading your email. But the other thing is you can tease what's coming, which is really nice to do in an email sequence. because it gets people to open the next one. It's right, like tomorrow I'm going to tell you the number one thing that helps my clients lose weight. And then they're like, ooh, like I want to know what that is. So they open your email tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think all of those, I think it kind of also goes back to the points you made about getting started, not getting so hung up on getting it done, perfectly. I think that that's important in focusing on the relationship that you are building, and then leading with the value, right? And that's the relationship, right? You're providing a helpful, addressing, a pain point. I think that's one thing where, if you have a specific free download, right, that's maybe one element of, maybe you offer lots of, maybe you have a broad set of services that everybody on your list, right, that it might not be pertinent. So those are some things, if, making sure that, I think that nurture sequence or that funnel set of emails kind of geared towards everybody who signs up for your list. Maybe when you're just starting out, you've got one kind of lead magnet that's working. Down the line, you might have a different sequence as you maybe launch. Maybe you end up doing a webinar, or you add a different free resource. You may have different sequences, and someone may already be on your list, and you let them know there's a different, a new freebie, or they go to your blog post and they read it. Then they kind of go off into a new series of emails because now they've opted in for that, right?
Exactly. I mean, you can get super fancy with it, right? Like you can segment different lists and then have people click on things, and then like what they're interested in. But do not worry about that. Like you said, it's really, you don't worry about it being perfect. Just remember, you're building a relationship with another human. Be yourself, write the way that you would speak, and you can always add to your sequence, like start with one email, then add a second, and keep going. And I'll still, like, if I send out an email that does really well, that performs well, and I get feedback on and gets a lot of clicks, well, I might add it to my sequence because it's a good email. So you can always do that later on.
That's a good point. And you mentioned, the technology angle, and I think it can be really scary for people, the email marketing software in general, beyond just which one do I use, to then, okay, how do I learn to, have these emails go and be on autopilot? Because it's, there is a learning curve to these, software programs. Can you kind of maybe break it down into some simple terms, as far as, and maybe we'll talk about some specific programs that you recommend, but what's happening in these email software programs, right?
Well, I'm definitely not any sort of tech expert, but I started with MailChimp, and I know that that's what you use, and you're really well versed on that because you've taken the course for it. So I started with MailChimp, and then I switched over to ConvertKit a little bit later on in my business. And I love ConvertKit. I find it really suits my needs. And there's a lot you can do with it that I don't know. Like, I mean, I haven't kept up to date with MailChimp because I don't use it anymore, but I'm sure they've like also added features that weren't available when I started with it. Like, for example, creating the actual landing page itself, because when somebody's going to come download your freebie, it's nice to have a simple landing page that isn't your website. Like, it's good to have it on your website too, but often when people go to your website, they get distracted clicking around and doing other things. So it's nice to have a landing page that's just focused on your freebie. And I use lead pages for that, because when I first started, like, MailChimp didn't have the option to create landing pages, but I know they do now, and ConvertKit does now too. So it's really nice that you can have it all in one platform versus like paying for multiple things.
Yes. So the whole, we talk about after the free download. If we're talking about your free download, what to do after you get that new subscriber. We talked about the welcome email. So, your email marketing system is going to allow you to what call them automated campaigns, right?
Mhm.
It's an automated email that goes out based on subscriber activity, right? So they've subscribed to your list, and some people get fancy that you also, as you maybe move down the line, as you have numerous freebies or maybe multiple sequences, you might need to say only start this sequence if they downloaded this particular freebie. But if you're just starting out, if everybody coming into your list is supposed to get that that sequence, you don't need anything extra. It's just start the sequence for every new subscriber, and you can always,
Mhm.
learn and grow down the line, but you don't even need to segment out because you're just getting started. Everybody on your list is probably opting for the one freebie that you have, right? And they're going to get your nurture sequence or your little funnel to the specific action that you've identified, which is either buy your course, book a call, book a discovery call, or whatever it is you want them to do.
Exactly.
And so I think really understanding how to set up an automated campaign and paying for a program that allows you to do that. Sometimes the free ones don't, and that to me is an absolute 100% essential must-have function in your email marketing. That's the whole purpose, that these things happen on autopilot. I don't know if you agree, but you have to have that functionality.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that, like you said, it's essential because you're not going to manually, trigger a sequence or send out emails, especially when your list grows. Like there's no way that you'd be able to keep up with that.
No.
So it's just all happening in the background. When somebody opts in, the email sequence gets triggered. You don't even have to think about it at that point. And you can choose how often you want things to go out. Like the first one should go out immediately because they're excited and they want to receive your guide or download. But then after that, you can space it out. I mean, I say the first few, it's nice to do like either daily or every other day because the excitement is high and it's good to really like be top of mind. But then you can space it out like once a week or however often you want to email your list.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. So you mentioned ConvertKit. I use, MailChimp. I know, there's MailerLite. There's many out there. I also think of it like shoe brands sometimes. You could talk to someone if you're a runner who swears by Brooks or Asics or Nike or whatever, and literally there would be a throwdown over which. But I think ultimately, you mentioned they do a lot of the same things. So not to get hung up in the absolute right choice. You know, depending if you're a super advanced runner, maybe you'll notice the difference between, Brooks and Asics. But if you're just going for a quick mile walk around the block, like you're just getting started, it might not be so significant. And people do change. You mentioned you change to a different, it's not the end of the world if you end up having to change. Like people do this. So just make a decision and pick one. Just pick one.
Exactly. Yeah. Just they're all similar. Like you mentioned, there's so many of them.
Right.
MailerLite, there's Flowdesk, I think is fairly new, but a couple
Yes.
of my clients use it and like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's way more fancy ones like Infusionsoft, but you do
Right.
not need that when you're starting out at all. It's much more complicated. So yeah, just decide, just move forward. You can always switch it later, but
Mm-hmm.
there's power in making a decision.
But I think you made a good point about what are things you may not know your email software program can do for you. Service can do is the landing pages.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say you have your website, but you can't necessarily figure out how to, have a page to direct people to. You could create that landing page through MailChimp or through ConvertKit or through MailerLite or through all of the ones
Right.
that then is they put in their email on that page that's only for that, right? It has an image, call to action text, and isn't cluttered with other menu links for your website. So definitely look into, whether or not, your tool offers a landing page because it
Yeah.
probably does. Of course, you can pay for added ones, like you mentioned, lead pages and otherwise, but it's really can be really simple to just set it up there. And you can always rebuild a landing page later on if you opt for like Elementor or different
Yeah,
builders, website builders. It's not like it's okay to just get started on a MailChimp page or a ConvertKit landing page and change it in the future.
for sure.
Yeah, so let's talk about the idea of hiring out your nurture sequence or your funnel, because I think some people just think I just want someone to do it for me. Do you think that that's a good idea for some people? How do you just kind of, I guess I'm asking your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're starting out, like a good copywriter is quite a big investment. So when you're first starting out, it may not be the best use of your resources, especially if you're not really clear on who your audience is and like really know them inside and out, because the key to good copywriting is good market research. It's like really knowing their pain points, their desires, their hopes, their fears, like all of it, and using their language in that. So if you are going to work with a copywriter, I mean, you want to have that available for them, or you want to find a copywriter who actually does that for you, because there are copywriters who do the market research and then also do the writing. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But the other thing too is like you want them to be able to write in your voice, which isn't an easy thing to do, because there needs to be congruence between like how people are receiving your emails and how they're going to receive you on the phone, right? If you get on a call with them and like your emails were all like very like fun and like bubbly and whatever, and then you get on the phone and you're like a more reserved, serious person, well, there's going to be a disconnect. People are going to be like, oh, that's not who I thought I was getting on the phone with. So you really want the emails to be your style, like your personality in your voice, and say things the way that you would actually say them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think you made a good note earlier about adding an email to your sequence that performed well. And I think as you're refining maybe what copy resonates, I think emailing your list regularly and looking at what you're putting in the subject line and what's getting opened as you add something to your your email sequence and looking at it and saying, wow, that email is getting twice the open rate of the others in the sequence. What is it about that message? And then adding maybe talking in the next email about how you address that, right? So with a specific example. So learning from, like, it's great to outsource, but I think you made a good point. If you don't know, if you're not really clear on your audience and how you're the problem that you're solving, then it's hard to outsource that if you don't have that stuff established.
Exactly. It just won't. I mean, they'll write a sequence, but it
Mm-hmm.
won't probably work the way that you want it to.
Well,
I mean, the other thing to keep in mind too that just popped into my head is like I think sometimes we're quick to think that something's not working before we've actually given it a fair shot or tested it, because it could be as simple as like a subject line, right? Like
mm-hmm.
subject lines do make a difference. So you can play around with subject lines rather than like scrapping. People can be like, oh, this lead magnet doesn't work, nobody likes it, whereas maybe it was just the like subject line that wasn't enticing enough to get people to open it. So I would like encourage you to tweak and play around with some of that before you just decide that you're going to overhaul the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. So let's kind of talk about this. We've been talking a little bit about the customer journey and maybe using an example of, let's say, in your own practice, you can even use your own, business coaching business as an example of how you have a journey, or perhaps one of your clients talking about this whole idea of, okay, the free download to the desired action. Maybe kind of walking us through that in an example.
So the actual email sequence, or just
Yeah,
from
like the idea. So, okay, this is the free download, right? You know, this is kind of some of the email would be like general topics, and what do we want them to, what do we have accomplished with our, you know, our funnel email, our customer journey.
Yeah. I mean, so the first step in the customer journey is awareness, which means that the prospect or the potential customer like knows that they have a problem, but they don't necessarily know that you exist or that you have a solution for it. And so that's where your lead magnet can really fit in, because when they start Googling or searching on social media for the answer to whatever problem it is they have, that's when, you know, they may come across your lead magnet that's like giving them that simple solution. So you know, another lead magnet that I have in my business is 11 ways to become a client magnet, or to like to attract clients. And so again, that's definitely a pain point for a lot of business owners and new entrepreneurs, is like they just have a hard time finding clients. So if they were to search, you know, in a group or search online, like, how do I find clients for my nutrition business?
Or and at the end of an Instagram post, you might say like, hey, grab my, you know, whatever. My God.
Exactly. So you're going to promote the thing often. So thanks for, you know, mentioning that, because that's another piece of it. It's like I speak with so many entrepreneurs and they're like, well, nobody's downloading my lead magnet. And we look at it and they're actually not even promoting it. So, you know, once you create the thing, you want to shout it from the rooftops and like promote it as much as possible. Like post it everywhere, share it on Instagram, share it on Facebook, like share it in Facebook groups that permit promos. But get it out there, because if you're not promoting it, you can't expect that people are just gonna find it. So that's a really good point. But yeah, so once they find your thing and they download it, then you're gonna lead them on a journey, continuing the journey, building that relationship with them, to the point where they're ready to take action, right? So part of that is like, not only what do they need to know about you, like how do you build that credibility with them? So that could be through case studies or social proof, including testimonials of happy clients that have got results from working with you. It could be just sharing more about yourself and your story, especially if you are your ideal client. I know that's not always the case. Like a lot of dietitians don't work with you know, with people who had a health problem that they have. But if you are a version of your ideal client, like later on in the journey, then you should know the struggles intimately. And by sharing your own story and journey, that really helps people kind of like see that you understand and they can put themselves in your shoes, but also the fact that you came out the other side and that you're well qualified to help them through the process as well. So share your story if it's relevant, client stories, and then also address objections. That's really important, because the more you can do that in your content and in your sequence, the less you'll have to do it when you get them on the phone, because objections are normal. So things like, I'm not sure, this is more related to nutrition coaching, but things like you know, does your program work with restrictive, like with a specific eating habits, like I'm vegan, I don't know if this is going to work for me, or I have a dairy allergy, like is your program going to work for me? So addressing common questions or concerns, objections, or like now's not the right time, you know, that's a common one, like I'm not ready. So the more you can speak to that in your content, the better off you'll be when you get people on the phone.
Yes, I agree completely. So we've kind of hinted to a few metrics. So before, I want to make sure we address kind of the effectiveness, right? So oftentimes when I started this, you know, vanity metrics, right, of how many people are signing up for my, you know, free download, that what other things can we, look at? You mentioned, which I thought was really valuable, obviously looking at how many people are opening your email and maybe making, changes to your subject lines to see if that can get, you a little bit higher open rate. Also the click rate, like how many people are clicking on your call to action, and always being really cognizant of not having 90 million of those per email, right? Just a, hopefully one single thing you want them to do per email. That's very difficult. I think it's easy to think, well, I don't want to send so many emails, so you have like a ton of different things, and well, check this out and check this out and look at this and look at that, and they're like, I have no idea what you want me to do when they open the email.
Yeah.
And think about your own, I always close my eyes, and I am very guilty of this myself, but I think about how many email marketing campaigns I open when I am walking from one place to another, standing in the grocery store line, or my full attention, and that, I am more apt to, click and read more when it's absolutely simple and there's really only one thing that I can do. And it's, easier when it's, I think sometimes less is more, as far as the action that you want them to take from each email. Simple.
Absolutely. Yeah, because if you think about it too, right? Like if you have a lot of links and they just click on the first one, the chances of them coming back are slim, because then they're lost in, wherever they went, they're lost online, and now they're gonna like go check social media, and they're just, people are so distracted and overwhelmed these days. So if they're clicking out of your email, they're probably not coming back. So make sure it's a good call to action. It's like the thing you really want them to do.
Correct. That call to action. So for measuring the effectiveness of your, your, I guess, nurture sequence and your free download, besides just how many people are signing up for your list, any other things that you recommend that we haven't already talked about?
I mean, I would just keep an eye on open rates and click rates as well. But also realize that you can't really make any sort of decision on that data until you've had at least 100 people go through your sequence. If you have like 10 subscribers, you really like don't have enough data there to make a decision. So I'd let at least 100 people go through the sequence before you start changing things up. But then at that point, yes, you can play around with subject lines, see if that makes a difference. But also by that point, you'll have a sense of like how many people have gone through the sequence and actually converted into a client or a course buyer, or, then you'll have a better sense. Because if like 100 people, conversion rates are, it varies. Yeah, I mean, it varies, but they're on the low side, right? Like 2 to 3%. They can be higher. But if you're getting like, for every 100 people that go through your sequence, you're getting 3 clients out of it. That's great. That's 3% conversion. And that's actually something to be happy about. I know it seems really small. And if you're not kind of familiar with that number, you're thinking, oh my God, that's like so small. But that's typically what it is.
And those are for people who are doing it really well. And honestly, I feel that giving yourself, that even if you write your nurture sequence and 20% of people open it and nobody signs up with you, you're taking like the first step, right? Like you have some data to go from. Now you can make it better. Because I think sometimes we don't, put out the nurture sequence because it's not exactly what we want it to be yet. So really just saying, don't judge yourself on if it gets a horrible open rate or nobody books a call with you. Like you have to get started, and the people who are at 2 to 3% conversion rate, those are people who are doing it really well and probably had some opt-ins and some sequences that were horrible. They just aren't widely publicizing it right now.
Yeah. Just, I mean, everybody starts somewhere. So you can't compare yourself to somebody who's been doing this a lot longer. Just get started, and remember, it's all about relationships, and there's so many ways to build relationships. So email marketing is one of them, but there's also lots of other ways that you don't want to neglect as you're building your business.
Correct. Because having a free download or a free resource, I think, is one great way to generate potential, to generate leads. And I think the whole purpose of our call, this Q&A today, was really to make sure that you don't just stop there, right? That you then have that welcome email. Like, that's step one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to create the welcome email, and I'm going to get that, set up. And, then I'm going to email people like once a week for the next couple months. And I'm going to look at what emails are performing really well. And then I'm going to maybe figure out how I can add a couple of those to my sequence, and like a call to action to sign them up for something. And that letting yourself, learn, so that, that it is a process.
Yeah. And it could even be a social media post, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be an email. If you had a social media post that was really popular and got a lot of engagement, well, turn that into an email and like add that to your sequence. So, yeah.
I've done that many times. I think actually social media is a great way. You're posting more often on something like Instagram, or Facebook, that if something is really popular or gets a lot of saves or a lot of likes, that then, using that as kind of your, okay, that's the one I should take and make my, email, like modify it a bit and use it as my email communication. So you're already kind of putting it out there as far as a feeler of how's it resonating with your followers. So yes, that was a really good point. Good tip. Repurposing your content, as they say.
Totally. I'm all about repurposing.
Yep. So how can people follow you, learn more about you, your podcast, Health Pro to CEO? Definitely a good listen. So give people some details.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a Facebook group called the Health Pro to CEO. So come join if you're not already a member. I do lots of trainings and post tons of content in there. And I also have the podcast, as Megan mentioned, the Health Pro to CEO podcast. It's awesome. The episodes are really short, 7 minutes each. So I know everybody's busy and I'm all about action. So the last thing I want you to do is like spend all your time learning and feeling like you don't know enough. These episodes are super actionable, just like right to the point. So yeah, and then you can check out my website too at orlywachter.com.
Excellent. Yes, definitely recommend, checking out Orly's content, some of the free resources that she recommended. I always appreciate that Orly focuses on action and not getting in this perpetual state of learning. I always see that as a theme in, imperfect action beats out, someone who knows a lot but hasn't actually taken the first step. So I love that you celebrate that and you encourage it. So thanks for being here today. And I think, I definitely gave me some things to kind of rethink for my own. I think our new subscriber sequence is in a perpetual state of improvement. And I think for me, I had a few little light bulbs that I was like, okay, feeling like I have a place for my own self to move forward. So thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I hope this was really helpful for everyone.
All right. So thanks everyone for being here, and we will be back in, what month will it be? September. Once we're through, what is this? The back to school or whatever it is for the fall for everyone. So good luck to all of you. If that's on your plate, I feel you. So take care.
Thank you, Megan.
All right. Bye, everybody.